Hello and welcome to this BB Education cutting tutorial. In today's tutorial, we're going to be taking you through a classic square line. A classic one length bob, but our line being square. We're going to work through the comb. Working through the comb really is using the comb as a guide to steady the hair whilst we cut it. It steadies the hair very clean, as almost like a ruler, but also it applies hardly any tension. The lower the tension, the more control we actually have of the hairline. So whereas if we were to apply pressure with our hand, placing the hair neat prior to cutting, we're applying a lot of tension to the root area. And when we remove that tension, that will surely affect the characteristics of our cut line. Another method is when people choose to use their hand. I strongly advise against this. I think it's the worst method for the shape we're cutting. Firstly, we have too much tension, but secondly, we have far too much elevation. So, we're going to work through the comb. The lack of tension will also help to compensate for any root patterns. So as we come through, we keep our scissors holding the hair in the comb. So scissors going first, the comb goes in second. The scissors hold all the hair neatly in the comb. This is important as it keeps the hair off the skin, helps you control the elevation, and helps us to cut more to a natural fall. The comb is there really as a guide, just to hold the hair still whilst we cut it. So as we comb through, making sure we have a neat and even tension, we're now able to start to place our cut line. So we're working with the comb's depth elevation. The lower the elevation, the stronger and heavier our line is going to be. But although, yes, we do want a very strong, precise outline, by working with a zero elevation, which means the hair be flat to the skin, sometimes this applies too much strain to the root area, almost forcing the root to sit in a position that it won't want to sit when it's dry. So working in this way, working through the comb, using the comb as a ruler, working with no attention to the root, just keeping the hair steady whilst we cut a square line, will give us a much more accurate haircut, especially when the hair dries to a natural fall. So this is your guideline. So from this point, keep taking the sections above it horizontally, nice and neat, no bigger than a centimetre in width. If the section's too big, you'll find it really difficult to control the root pattern and ultimately find it very difficult to see your guide. Again, watch how I'm using the scissors to almost help knit together my guideline and my new cutting section. It almost helps to stabilise how the hair travels down from the root. A further section is taken at the back, again horizontal, again a centimetre thick. This section will be brought down to a comb's depth elevation in the same manner we've demonstrated. So head position. Currently the head is slightly leaning forward. This isn't ideal. You'll notice now that as I follow my guideline, my line is almost following an A-line shape, almost like it's going to be getting longer towards the front. So keep the head in an upright neutral position. I'll remove those wayward millimeters to perfect the square line, but be really conscious of that head position. It's going to be much better when working square to have the head upright in a more neutral position, not leaning forward, not leaning back. Once we've done a few sections, I'm just going to check our balance to make sure everything is on the right track. And then we're going to look at taking another section down in the same way and just complete that by connecting it to our guideline. Again, I always use the comb as a ruler. Now, the sections change. We're going to start at the front, roughly an inch in from the hairline, working our diagonal back section just behind the ear. When we hit this point, we're going to curve the section and then work more horizontal. So you see our section comes down, curves, and then forms parallel to the sections we were cutting. So this is it complete. Now, why would we do this? The whole point of this is to ensure that as we connect our square line running from the back into the front, we're able to connect the entirety of the outline at the front, meaning all the hair from the top of the parting at the front zone and all the hair that connects in between both. This means opposed to just working with horizontal sections and then waiting till the last section to make sure the length that the client's going to see is correct, we do that in the first section. So in the first section, we get full control over the shape as it works from the back to the front on both sides. Again, just to assess the level of over direction, we groom the hair once complete off the face down to a natural fall and check. We now take subsequent sections mirroring the previous section we've just taken. This means our sections begin to look like a halo and keep getting smaller and smaller the more we work up. Cutting your line, be conscious to work to eye level. So either sit on a stool or potentially ask your client to stand so that you're cutting to an eye level so you can clearly see your line. Also, your body position. You need to be square to your section you're cutting. This is to keep your fingers straight and to keep your comb straight. If you veer off slightly, what you're potentially going to find is that your fingers will also veer off, or your comb will. So remaining square, keeping your shoulders locked, means we're able to maintain a parallel square finish to the previous guideline. As we remove the next sections, we're going to keep our sections nice and clean, similar size, but our sections will inevitably get smaller to a really small halo. So as we take down the final section, I always start to use the wide part of my comb. This is due to the fact that the wide part will give less tension, and I always find that there are some hair growth patterns on the top, and also the fact that there's less weight on the final section to essentially pull it down. These factors mean that if we use the same level of tension, we can promote more graduation in our line, and this will require more work when we've finished. So once completed, our shape is finished. All that remains for us to do now is just take one final assessment. I usually will use a mirror. I'll look from a distance, let my eyes adjust, and assess the form of my haircut. Now I'm going to wrap dry the hair, get the hair really smooth, and control the root area before I begin to look at my final assessment. So now the hair is dry, comes our final assessment and our refining. To do this, to remove all the imperfections, we want to be sitting slightly lower than the line, or at least at eye level. I begin utilising a pointing technique. A pointing technique is using the very tip of the scissor to cut underneath the line to remove anything that isn't necessarily part of our line. We also, you'll see here, club cutting. Club cutting gives me the maximum finish for a strong line. I find a combination of both is really adequate for this type of style. I want a strong line, but I want it to look natural. So the chipping technique, all those little triangles, they essentially help to flatten the line. And the combination then with the club cut really helps to perfect the end result. You can really see it more clearly as I'm removing the graduation. Essentially, graduation is a feathered finish underneath your line that needs to be removed. Now you can see here, at eye level, I can spot an imperfection. I'm going to begin with club cutting, and then to soften the shape I've just cut, I go in with my pointing. Refining is a process that can't be rushed. Move the head or move around your client. See what changes in your line. Ensure your line is fluid and neat and balanced. Don't just look from one point of view, look from a varied point. So for an example here, as I cut the side and I think it looks great, as soon as I move to a different perspective, I see more imperfections, just in this area here. So I'm able to go through and take away small amounts of hair and really get a more balanced effect to my line. And then we come to the very front where we're just going to remove the final imperfections. Be conscious of where the root is travelling when refining. Remember, all shape starts from the root. And this completes today's tutorial. My hope is that showing you different ways of working with one of the most classic haircuts will just really aid you in developing your own methods of advancing your understanding of a classic shape. This is a haircut that everybody can do, but there's a certain standard to getting it just right. And I hope this tutorial really aids you in developing your own bob further. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you again soon.